also the Low Budget Review Show. I'm your host, Eric Smith. Today I'm talking about The Complex by Brian Keene. It's from Deadite Press, and it comes out later this month. I believe it's March 6th right now as I'm recording this. So it'll be out later this month. I read an advanced digital copy, but it is coming out in paperback. But I don't have one to hold up and show you. So if you want to see that cool cover, just go back to the picture at the beginning of this video and check it out. So The Complex by Brian Keene. Very easy to nutshell what this book is, essentially. Hordes of crazy naked people are attacking an apartment complex, and the only thing on their mind is murder. And the people inside the apartment complex are trying to survive. What could be more simple than that? The the nutshell, not trying to survive. That's not simple at all. That's the very bare bones of what this story is. Now, Brian Keene is a grandmaster of pulp horror, but his writing elevates it from your typical hack slash 80s type mass market paperback horror. It has those elements to it. This is a very brutal, bloody story, and you could just look at it as that sort of grade B type of thing. But what Keene does, what he brings to this, is character, a lot of great character, and underlying themes. I think everything, at least all the novel length stuff that he writes, tends to have some sort of underlying theme to it, and that's what elevates these types of stories. And this, I said hordes of crazy naked people just bent on murder and mayhem, and it's a scenario that's somewhat familiar. We have 28 Days Later, the amazing comic book Crossed by Garth Ennis, One Rainy Night, I think it is, by Richard Lehman. Those are the first three things that come to mind when I read the synopsis of this book. But again, Keene takes it past that, brings something new. And this book has a lot of great characters. And I like the way he starts the book is the first few chapters introduce us to the characters. But as he's doing that, each chapter, which introduces us to something new, also escalates the danger, escalates what's going on. So first we're introduced, and I'm going to do this off the top of my head. I didn't take any notes, so I'm going to see if I can name all the characters and who they are. First we have Sam, who is a suicidal writer. So we meet him, we learn all about Sam and his life, who he is, why he's suicidal, and at the same time there's something else going on outside his apartment. Then we meet, I believe it's Terry, single mother, and her son Caleb, and her friend, whose name I don't remember. So we meet them in the second chapter. They're just moving into the apartment complex, and the threat escalates even more. Let's see. Then we have Mrs. Carlucci, who is a widow who lives with her 4 cats. We have Stephen / Stephanie / Rose. And Stephanie is a transgender woman. She was born Stephen. She's now Stephanie, a name she chose because it's close to Stephen, the name she was given by her parents. But she thinks of herself as Rose. And again, in the chapter where we meet her, get to know her, things escalate even more. We have Scooby and Turo, a couple of thugs who are hiding out from some people that are even worse worse criminals than Scooby and Turo are. Then we've got Grady, an old Vietnam vet, lives alone, and we have the serial killer known as the Exit. I think that covers the residents of the complex. Now, fans of Brian Keene will recognize the name of the Exit because he's a recurring character in a number of Keene's stories. And so the complex, as with, I believe, every single piece of fiction that Keene has written, all tie together. He's got the whole labyrinth mythos. For those who are unfamiliar with it, there's beyond the world, there's a labyrinth that connects all of the multiverses, all the similar Earths, or all the alternate Earths, I suppose, is the way to put it. So throughout all of Keene's fiction, there are little things that connect it all. And I'm not going to get into all of it, all the different threats. There are these, essentially his, for lack of a better term, I can't think of, I'm drawing a blank on what he calls his giant threat, the beings that come to all of the alternate Earths to destroy them. But it all ties together. So you have the Exit, who's in this story. He's in other stories. I believe Grady. This is a variation of a Grady that's been in another story. Other characters that are mentioned are in other stories. So for Keene fans, if you're like me, I love seeing this stuff. The way it all ties together. These little Easter eggs for the Keene fan. If you're not a fan of Brian Keene, if you're not as familiar with his work, it's not going to distract you from the story at all. There's no point where it's a kind of in your face, here's an inside joke kind of thing. It's just the story flows perfectly well, whether or not you get these little Easter eggs. So they're all really nice characters, nicely written characters. They're all nice characters. Sam, I tend to think anytime a writer has a writer character, I tend to think maybe they're being a little autobiographical. So whether that's their intention or not, I can't say. But right off the bat, oh look, Sam's a horror writer. Is this a little bit of Brian Keene shining through? Don't know. But Sam is great. They're all very distinct characters. This, I think, is the first. This is the most I have read of the Exit, I think. And it was nice to get to know that character a bit more. And I said serial killer with air quotes because he's not a typical serial killer character. You're going to have to read it to find out why I said serial killer. So, as I said, it's Brian Keene's character work that raises his stories. One of the things that raises his story above the typical pulp horror. And pulp horror is something that I love. Sometimes you just want to lose yourself in a wild and crazy story. And this is a wild and crazy story, but it's more than that. So the one thing that he does is character. The other is his underlying themes that seem to run through his work. And in this case, to me anyway, there's a couple of things. And there's an afterword, so he talks a little bit about this. So I don't think I'm completely out of line here. as far as what I saw as the underlying themes. So essentially, the one is um, basically how in the modern world we don't seem to bother to get to know our neighbors. Um, I don't even live in an apartment complex, uh, but growing up, I knew all of my neighbors, and now the last one actually, the last one from when I was growing up, just moved away a month or two ago. I've never said a word to the people who've moved into their house. I couldn't tell you the names of any of my neighbors. That's not true. There's still one old couple left. That's been there since before I've lived here. Uh, but as for everybody else, I couldn't tell you who they are. And that's in just a suburban neighborhood in an apartment complex. I mean, you're so much closer, and yet people don't seem to bother to get to know the people around them. And that's one of the themes here, um, which ties into the other theme as I see it, which is how people see themselves, how other people see them, and how they think other people see them, if that makes sense. Um, because they don't bother to get to know their neighbors, um, each character has certain perceptions of who their neighbors are, and I think some of those perceptions, as the story goes on, some of those perceptions are reinforced, and some of them are changed, uh, and they also some of the characters think that their neighbors see them a certain way, and some of that's reinforced, and some of that is tossed to the wayside. Um, and all of this great character development, these themes, are all packaged in this just balls to the wall, violent story. As I said, it's just hordes of these crazy, naked, weapon wielding, guttural, grunting people just ripping people apart. Um, they don't go after their own. They don't go after the other crazy, naked, guttural, grunting, weapon wielding crazies, um, unless they get in the way. They're going after the normal people, and so it's all for the most part focused on this complex. The story is, and everybody has to come together, and they're trying to survive, um, and it just builds and builds and gets crazier and crazier, and people come and people go, and people live and people die. um, it's just wild. It's so entertaining. I, uh, I needed to go to bed so that I could get up and go to work, and I just didn't want to put this. I didn't put it down. I just kept reading until I got to the end. It's that good. Um, and towards the end of the book, there are a couple other characters introduced. And this is another case where if you're kind of in the know, I suppose, for lack of a better way to put it, you'll recognize these two characters, and it's a nice little treat. But if you don't recognize the characters, if you're not in the know, for lack of a better term, then again, it's not going to affect the story at all. It's not an in your face kind of thing. It's not a wink wink nudge nudge. They're just some characters that are introduced. So if you don't know, they're just going to be cool characters that you meet in the story. If you do know, it's kind of like, hey, I get it. Um, so that was kind of cool. I always like that, and that's one of the things I really like about Brian Keene's writing, the way he tells his story. This is told, I believe the proper term is present tense. Is the way the story is told. I'm not a scholar. I'm not sure if that's the proper terminology, but it does lend an immediacy to the story, of course, because it's happening right now, um, as it were. So, uh, just fantastic. Brian Keene, if Joe Lansdale is my number one favorite author, and I'm pretty sure he is, then Brian Keene is a very close second. Two people I'll read anything they write. Um, I think of all the stuff that I've read by Brian Keene, I've been slightly disappointed once. Um, and I think I talk about it. It was one of the Clickers books, and I talk about that in a much earlier review video. Um, but so, with all that being said, it should not come as a surprise to anyone that I give the complex 5 out of 5 bloody machetes. Um, there you go, 5 out of 5. It's a quick read. It's under 200 pages. It's um, it's so fast paced with wonderful characters, and oh, the ending. The ending is going to be divisive. I think. Uh, I don't even think there's going to be a middle ground. I think people are either going to love it or they're going to hate it. I fall firmly in the former camp. I love the ending. And I'm not going to tell you anything at all about it. You're going to have to read the book to find out. But I really do think it's going to split people. I suppose there's some people who won't care that much one way or the other. You know, it takes all kinds, but I think there's going to be a huge group that love it, a huge group that do not like it, because that's just the way it is. That's the way people are. But I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic ending. Um, so that's it. 5 out of 5 for The Complex by Brian Keene. Uh, Comes out later in March. I am definitely going to be picking up a physical copy of this book. I think I have physical copies of everything that I could get my hands on. I don't have everything he's written, unfortunately, but everything I do have, I at least have one copy of, physical copy. So I'm happy that I got to read this a little bit early, and now I can't wait to actually have a copy in my hands. Oh, it'll be so nice. I keep glancing over at my Brian Keene bookshelf. He actually takes up 2 shelves. Because I know exactly where it's going to go on the shelf. So, highly recommended. I will have 1 or 2 links for the book in the description below. I'll have one for Amazon, if there's one for Deadite, one of my favorite publishers of horror. So if there's a direct link to their site, I'll have that there as well. So if you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put them in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be nice here on my little YouTube channel. So please like, share, and subscribe. And that's it. The Complex by Brian Keene. 5 out of 5 bloody machetes. This is the Low Budget Review Show. I'm Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books.